Welcome to Around the Weird. Here's your host, the museum curator of the strange and unusual, Mr. Nothing.
Thank you, mysterious voice, and welcome back to Around the Weird, a booktube channel where I talk about all the unusual and out of the ordinary literature that I've found in my travels. It appears that we are out of the month of October, so I can return to reading non-spooky short stories, because it is Short Story Tuesday, and I wanted to focus on a specific short story that I read. So I'll still be talking about spooky short stories from time to time, but outside of October, they are probably more sparing. But anyways, the short story that I found for today is quite interesting. It is about shopping for a dress. I am referring to 20 Hot Tips to Shopping Success by Plett, which is part of the short story collection A Safe Girl to Love, which was published in 2014. For those who don't know, Plett is an American author who's been getting her work published for the past 10 years. I think she's won one or two awards for her work in this time. She mainly focuses on publishing short stories or short story collections, but I think she has at least one book that has been published in her name. And her stories often focus on what appears to be the transgender experience, or just individuals and their tumultuous mindsets at a time when they're unsure of who they are or where they want to go or anything or what they want to do in life or anything like that. Teenagers and whatnot. I think that a lot of her writing focuses on her own experience, as Plett is transgender herself, so writing about what she knows. And if this book is any indication, the short stories in this collection are really good, although also somewhat sad, showcasing the greatness of being comfortable in who you are, but also the uncertainty in whether or not you'll be accepted by society and whatnot, or even yourself, the uncertainty of if you'll ever be comfortable in your own body, which is, I know, something that a lot of transgender individuals hyperfixate on, among other things. And so I would like to check out the book that she published. I forget the name of it, but it was published around 2017. Based on the writing here, I was a big fan of it, so that's something to look forward to. But without further ado, let's talk about 20 hot tips to shopping success. I will do a summary, a little bit of analysis, and we will move on from there. So 20 hot tips for shopping success focuses on an unnamed main character. I think it's written from the second person's perspective, although I don't think they ever say you in this story. The narrator just refers to like a specific person who's never quite named, and it's presented as 20 different tips, although there is a narrative within those 20 tips, which I think is really fascinating. And essentially the narrator or not the narrator, but the main character is trying to find a dress to wear, but they keep running into a few problems. Like they're scared to enter the store. At first they don't want to go in. Then they also find themselves distracted by food, or they try to tell themselves that because they're constantly eating, they're not going to be able to find a dress in their size. But we eventually we eventually realize that the person that we're talking about here is a man trying to find a skirt in their size or a dress, presumably because they are either a cross-dresser or a transgender individual going along that path, where they begin wearing clothes from the gender that is what they believe themselves to be. And so they're trying to do that, but they're a little bit worried. However, they do eventually regain their confidence, and they decide that they are going to buy this dress, and they purchase it. They go home. They try the dress on home. They also interact with their roommate. Specifically, they call when their roommate asks like where they've been. They're like, "Oh, I've been, having sex with a bunch of women." Kind of trying to put on that masculine front. They also think about or actually call their roommate a fag a couple times, trying to deflect whatever perceived, bigotry might be aimed their way if they accept or they tell other people what they're feeling. But the roommate doesn't really seem to care unless the narrator in this case takes up too much time in the bathroom, which is a little bit funny. And they look at themselves in the mirror, the narrator or the main character, and they feel uncertain about not only wearing the dress, but also how they look. Kind of a little bit of dysphoria going on with not being in the body that they believe themselves they should be. And eventually they just go back to their room and relax for a little bit before the roommate knocks on the door and the main character opens it. The roommate sees them wearing the dress and their eyes grow big, but they don't seem like put off by it. It seems more like, oh, this is just a thing that happens. And I think that instills more confidence in the main character. It's not meant to be anything like judgy or anything like that. And then the roommate just notes that, oh, I ate all your spaghetti. Do you want to go get a burrito? It's my treat. And they decide to go do that. And then the story ends with the main character being like, oh, I feel good after eating a burrito now, which is a nice way to end it. In terms of analysis, there is a little bit to talk about with this short story. It seems like Plett is talking about the transgender experience as she is writing it, but it's not something that we really discover until like a couple of tips into the story, with it being revealed that this is a man that we're focusing on, whereas if it were about a woman, it might be like, oh, I'm not like allowed to wear a nice dress or something like that because of who I look like. At least that was my thoughts. But here you can see that Casey Plett is focusing a lot on the idea of courage. Plett seems to argue that going out and seeking a gender-affirming outfit is courageous in and of itself. That it might be a hard thing to do because of the fear of being accepted by yourself, the fear of being accepted by the public at large, especially in a society, and as the time that I'm writing this, Americans, especially conservatives, are demonizing transgender individuals, making them out to be monsters when they are not. And so if you go out and you display yourself as trans, there's always a worry that you're going to be judged pretty harshly for it. That fear and uncertainty leads the character in the story to not really want to buy that dress. And when they buy it, they're uncertain if they can even wear it, or if they'll be judged like, oh, this is just a stupid whim of fancy. I shouldn't be wearing this type of dress. But ultimately, the narrator or the main character feels that it's okay for them to wear the dress, that they feel good in the dress, that it affirms who they believe themselves to be. And I think what Plett is getting at is that ultimately courage leads to more courage, that taking that tiny step towards gender affirmation leads to more steps in the future. And, just taking that initial first step is important because you have to start somewhere and you might as well start there. So a very, interesting message from Plett here. Plett also seems to be highlighting some of the feelings of gender dysphoria, not being comfortable in your body or feeling that you might be in the wrong body. Not everybody who's trans necessarily feels that dysphoria, and not everyone who is trans necessarily wants to be in a different body. I know there are some trans people who never transition from, male to female or female to male or whatever to whatever. That's important to note. So gender dysphoria isn't the case for everyone, but for the main character in the story, they're uncertain in their own body. They feel they're kind of gangly. They look at their body and it's there's an element of disgust. So it's again, there's that uncertainty and that fear, but there's also that sort of worried that the body that you have might not be the body that you want, that you like. There's a better way to express yourself. There's an interesting quote that I would like to read to you from this. Every young man in America seems to own boxers just like these. Take them off too. Look at the skirt. Catch a glimpse of your body in the mirror. It looks dirty. Go take a shower. Wash every part of your body carefully. Decide to shave your armpits for the first time. When you're done, do your legs too. Get up to the top half of your thighs before the hot water runs out. Discover a small amount of cuts and rashes when you towel off. But other than that, enjoy the smoothness. Don't look in the mirror. It's not helpful. Depending on how strongly you feel about this whole thing, it may very well not be helpful for a long time. And that's an interesting quote, just because, the main character is looking at their body and they're deciding, this isn't how I want to look. This isn't like the body that I want to have. So they shave their arms and their legs, and they look at their body when they're finished, and they're like, maybe I want to do more than that. Maybe I eventually want to get surgery. And it's like, I like how the narrator's like, don't look in the mirror. It's not going to be helpful ever. That might be Casey Plett's own advice, going from her own trans experience. I don't know if she ever transitioned or not, but that's something important to consider. And like, just in general, like, looking in the mirror is like, if you're in an unhappy place, it's not going to make you more happy. And one of the things that I think Plett is getting at here is that the thing that can help with this dysphoria is support from others and your own confidence. The support from others, in this case, being the roommate. I don't think the roommate ever judges the main character for their desire to be trans or the desire to wear a dress. They even note, like, oh, you've been acting strange the past couple of days. I think noting that, like, oh, the reason you've been strange is you've been in an uncomfortable state of mind. I understand now, or something like that. And so that support from that roommate, from the people around you, and ultimately from yourself, is going to help you because you're going to be able to realize what the next steps you need to take to combat, or even like learn to deal with that dysphoria and work around it, or something like that. So it is an interesting exploration from gender dysphoria that you don't often see in a lot of literature, because you don't often see literature about transgender individuals as well. Other things that I like about this story, like, I like how it's written as a thought process. So 1, 2, 3, like, a very interesting way to write this story, rather than writing it out as a traditional short story that you might see. Which I think is interesting. It reminded me a lot of Especially Heinous. I forget who wrote that one, but it's a sort of a Law and Order episode script with Stabler and Benson, like, their characters doing weird things, and it being another exploration of maybe some weird thoughts that the author is having. And then I also like how the careful use of the word fag in this story, showing that the internalized, transphobia, or internalized, like, homophobia that the main character might be experiencing, because, we often see those words thrown out there, and it's like, oh, I don't want anyone to perceive me as this, so I better throw it out at my roommate in order to deflect, or something like that. And how unhelpful that can generally be, because that distances us from the people we love and the people who might support us. Something to consider there. Anyway, those are my thoughts on 20 hot tips to shopping success by Casey Plett. A really good short story. Many of the short stories in this collection are very interesting and very worth reading. So if you have a chance, definitely go out and seek this out if you can. I would say that you could probably find many of these short stories in other places, just based on how many there are, and she might have gotten them published in other magazines or journals. So if you don't want to check out this book, definitely find some of her work, as I think it's pretty high quality, and I can't wait to read more from Casey in the future. If you read this before, you simply want to comment on something I said here, do so below. Let's have a discussion about Casey Plett. Otherwise, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for so more people can find out about the short story. And until then, I wish you the best of luck in your weird and shopping travels. Farewell.